No sense of respect!
Now that we've covered both of the 5 stars featured in this banner, let's now get onto the 4 stars, and we're going to be starting today with Faruzan. In today's video about Faruzan, we'll explore what she offers at a baseline, how each of her constellations improve her gameplay, and what scenarios she can be using. Let's first give a brief overview of her kit and role. Faruzan's primary role is to buff Anemo DPS units. The current lineup of Anemo DPS units is Wanderer, Zhao, and Heija. Her buffing capabilities increases with constellations, with her best being C6. Faruzan's elemental skill casts a polyhedron that deals AoE Anemo damage and grants her the manifest Gale state. Shooting a charged shot in the state shoots a hurricane arrow that deals Anemo damage equivalent to a fully charged shot. After a short delay, a vortex will summon, dealing AoE Anemo damage and pulling nearby enemies. The vortex damage is considered elemental skill damage. Faruzan's elemental burst summons a polyhedron that deals an initial pulse of AoE Anemo damage. Throughout its duration, it will travel in a triangular path and pulses at each corner it reaches. Enemies hit by the pulse have the perfidious wind's bale applied to them, decreasing their Anemo resistance. Additionally, all nearby party members are granted the Prayerful Wind's benefit, gaining an Anemo damage bonus. At C0, her burst lasts 12 seconds and will complete its path 2 times, dealing up to 7 instances of Anemo damage. Both effects last 4 seconds each time they're applied. Her elemental bursts cost 80 energy, making her energy needs very demanding. We'll go more in depth with this in a bit. Her Ascension 1 passive reduces how long it takes to fire a hurricane arrow and applies her elemental burst Perfidious Wind's Bale effect to enemies hit by the vortex. Her Ascension 4 passive activates when characters affected by her elemental burst Prayerful Wind's benefit deal Anemo damage to enemies with their normal, charge or plunging attacks, elemental skills, or elemental bursts. Such characters are granted the Hurricane Guard effect, increasing their damage dealt by a percentage of Faruzan's base attack. The effect can be triggered once within a 0.8 second interval and clears either when her elemental burst ends or after an instance of Anemo damage is dealt. While it only increases damage by about 1 to 2%, it's still an appreciated buff nonetheless. Faruzan provides many benefits for Anemo damage dealers at C0, but one of her biggest issues holding her back is her energy requirements to have her elemental burst ready every rotation. Her elemental burst costing 80 energy is already trifling enough, but alongside this, her elemental skill only generates 2 particles and can only generate when the pressurized collapse vortex hits enemies. This creates a dilemma where she needs more energy recharge in her stats than she would prefer having, unironically reaching requirements as high as 250% or even more depending on the situation. Even with multiple Favonius procs, she'll still need at least 200 to 220 energy recharge. Outside of methods like funneling or running multiple Favonius weapons, her only way of truly alleviating her energy needs is through her constellations, most notably her constellations 1 and 4. And speaking of constellations, let's now observe what each constellation does and how it affects her gameplay. Her Constellation 1 grants an additional Hurricane Arrow after using her elemental skill. This constellation allows her to gain more particles, shaving off about 10-ish to 20-ish% if using both stacks. Having a second charge also offers a bit more crowd control through her elemental skill. However, her crowd control is relatively small, so don't rely on it too much to keep enemies grouped. Faruzan's Constellation 2 increases her elemental burst duration by 6 seconds, causing it to last 18 seconds instead of 12 seconds. The increased duration allows the polyhedron to travel along its path an additional time and provides another 3 triggers. These additional triggers also allows for longer uptime for her burst effects and more instances of damage through her Ascension 4 passive, alongside a larger window for energy generation. Her Constellation 3 increases the level of her elemental skill by 3, making the max upgrade level 13. Because it is a talent upgrade, it doesn't provide that significant of a damage increase, nor does it really support her buffing capabilities that much, especially because it's through her elemental skill. Her Constellation 4 is also another constellation that really helps with her energy regeneration. The vortex made by the pressurized collapse will restore energy to Faruzan based on the number of opponents it hits. If it hits one opponent, it will restore 2 energy for Faruzan. Every additional opponent hit will restore 0.5 more energy for Faruzan. A maximum of 4 energy can be restored to her per vortex. This constellation really does help to alleviate a lot of her energy requirements and makes getting her burst consistently more reliable. Her Constellation 5 is yet another talent level upgrade, upgrading her elemental burst level by 3. While again, it's talent level upgrade and nothing super significant, something that I will note is that even when you get this Constellation 5, her Anemo damage bonus that scales with her elemental burst by level still actually increases even all the way up to the max. So at the very least, you do get at least a slight increase in Anemo damage bonus through this method. Her Constellation 6 is by far her most notable and best constellation by far, and is truly what makes Faruzan a really good unit and buffer for Anemo DPS units. Characters who are affected by her elemental burst's Prayerful Wind's benefit effect have 40% increased crit damage when they deal Anemo damage. When the active character deals damage while affected by Prayerful Wind's benefit, they will apply a pressurized collapse to the opponent that is damaged. This effect can be triggered once every 3 seconds, and the cooldown is shared between all party members. So not only does this improve her buffing capabilities for Anemo DPS units, but it also allows her to use sets like Tenacity of the Millilith more consistently because of the fact that it triggers Pressurized Collapses, which is bound through her elemental skill. Plus, this is yet another constellation that also somewhat helps with their energy requirements. So overall, when it comes to Faruzan, having her at C6 is very essential for a lot of what she has to offer. Now, as someone who has played Faruzan from C0 to C2, I've only recently gotten her C2, and I will say C2 is definitely an improvement compared to C0, but I think in general, even when you don't have C6, she is still somewhat playable. It is unfortunate though that her energy issues, especially regarding the fact that she needs a lot of energy recharge in her stats, is very prevalent within these early constellations. Nonetheless, I do think she's a unit that is still usable if you want to use her. It's just that once you get her C6, you will definitely notice a difference in performance. And like I mentioned in my last video regarding Wanderer, the damage difference of Wanderer and other Anemo DPS units when she is pre-C6 versus at C6 is beyond marginal, to say the least. So now let's talk about what situations you would mainly use Faruzan in. So as I stated earlier in this video, her main priority is buffing Anemo DPS units. Therefore, you usually want to put her in a team with Wanderer or Zhao or even Heijo, who can take advantage of her buffing capabilities. Oftentimes, you'll run her in teams where the Anemo DPS unit is a hyper carry. An example of such team is Wanderer, Faruzan, Bennett, and Zhongli. Outside of hyper carry teams, there's not that many other teams that are super viable for Faruzan. Alright, and that's going to wrap it up for this video. If you guys did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact content. Let me know if you have any other questions regarding Faruzan, and until the next video, which will actually be a Genshin tier list video, bye bye.